lots of time for Q&A. So my name is Jessica Hayes. I'm with the Department of Housing and Community Development in the state of California. This is the CDBG workshop. This is the final one in our series. Thank you all for coming. Just a quick note, we're videotaping this one to put up online for folks who weren't able to attend a session or who want to go back and revisit a session and see if there was something said they weren't sure about their notes or whatever. So this is going to be kind of our long-term record for this. We'll put this up online as soon as we have a chance to get it edited and approved. So just a heads up, you're being recorded. Jump right into it. So first of all, congratulations. You are all part of our pilot project. We're doing a pilot inside of a pilot. We are running our CDBG redesign pilot. I think I'm recognizing a lot of faces. I think I saw a lot of you folks when we came out in August and September and did training on what the new program redesign was going to look at. So we are piloting that inside of our new online grants management system hosted by eCivis called Grants Network. So it's a lot of change. There's a lot of things different. There's a lot of moving pieces. Some of the stuff has been really polished and we know exactly where we're going with it. Some of it not so much. And we're going to be kind of looking to you to help us figure out how to put that final polish on some parts of the program and some parts of the system. So, pilot in a pilot. One of the things that we are doing to kind of help make sure that our project, especially our grants management system, is as good as we can get it, is we're leaving parts of it unlocked until Monday. So on Monday, I got the whole day blocked out, and we sit down with our vendor. We're going to go through and we're going to lock the application up. What we've been asking folks is, as you're looking at the application, the online application, and you're playing with it and putting stuff in fields and seeing how stuff works, if something doesn't work right, if it seems like it's broken, if it's asking for information that doesn't make sense, if the instructions have a bad link in them, anything like that, if you can let us know, we'll go in and fix it. Right? Our goal here is to get this to be the best application that we can. We tested this program really thoroughly in a sterile environment, which means you sit there in a room and you click every single link and you check every single drop down, but you do it on your own network. It's not going out through, it's not online, it's not through the web. It's very, very thorough, but it's also very, very sterile. So it kind of depends on your ability to think of all the different strange ways that folks might potentially use funding and to really try to mimic the different experiences that you would have accessing the system on your own network. Which means we did a lot of testing, but we couldn't do 100% testing. There's stuff that's going to come up that we never thought about using it that way. We never thought about that option. It's just, you can't think of everything, right? So we've left stuff unlocked until Monday so that you can help us think of everything and you can help us identify anything that we're potentially missing. We've done a little bit of evolution on the application questions. So when you go in on Monday, there will be some changes. We're not doing massive changes. They're mostly clarifications, stuff to help make the questions easier to access or easier to look at. One of our key goals in this process is to improve the transparency overall of the application. That means especially in the competitive, when you're looking at your competitive application, it should be very, very clear what we're looking for to score and how you get maximum points for each component. So the changes that you'll see will be our attempt to help improve that clarity and to help improve that transparency. If at any point throughout this entire NOFA process you have a question, please ask it. There are no penalties for asking questions. We want to know where our information might be weak or thin, so that we can figure out what training we need to provide, what future resources we might need to look at, and especially if there is something that is causing the program to act kind of unequally or unevenly across jurisdictions, we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to participate. So if you can tell us what your experiences are, what you're seeing, even after we lock the application up, it might not be something that we can fix right now this time, but it's something that we'll put in our issue log to fix moving forward. As you know, we adopted our CDBG guidelines. They became active last October. We already have an issue log, right? That we're looking through the guidelines saying, okay, well, this has changed and this has changed, and these are things that we're going to need to go and update because the way that our system is actually going to function is different than some of the ways we maybe visualized it functioning. and we just need to make some adjustments, and that's part and parcel of actually keeping a program up and running and making sure that it runs effectively. So if you have questions, if you have issues, if you have concerns, if something doesn't make sense, no matter when, let us know. We'll be tracking on this to the best of our ability to make sure we can make things move smoothly. All right, so a little bit of housekeeping. We have 3 sessions, and then we'll leave about an hour for questions at the end. We'll put 5-minute, 10-minute breaks, kind of depending on how quickly we get through the sessions. I think this is a generic slide. Parking, hopefully you all found parking. Restrooms, we have badges back on the table. Restrooms are back in the behind the locked doors. Our goal of this workshop is to go over information that we haven't already addressed. So if you've gone onto our website, and you come down here to training and technical assistance, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've put together to kind of help provide a foundation for how the CDBG program needs to work. This includes our CDBG 101, which is just the introduction to all the different acronyms that the program uses, the redesign, which talks about how we're moving into the new over-the-counter OTC versus competitive program income, what we're going to be looking for in our new program income policy. We've got NEPA review, we've got program procurement and readiness that talks about how to access pre-agreement costs, how to do a procurement that meets federal requirements. We've got a couple of grant management systems, so an overview of how the system will work, how to set up your account. And then we have income survey information. So we've done a lot of kind of background building. So if the information, the questions or the concerns that you have, if it's something that's covered in this, we'll give a really quick answer in this workshop, but then we're going to kind of direct you back to this material because we have a lot of information we want to cover in this workshop, and we don't feel like we need to go in and recreate the wheel. You all have seen the 101. You know what you're doing. So really the goal here is to take the program components of the CDBG program, the CDBG redesign, and show you how they nexus with the actual system. This is really much more of an application workshop than a program workshop or or anything kind of related to the rules and regulations of CDBG. This is really where CDBG connects with the new system. And then we have staff recording questions. We're running a pretty robust FAQ and issues log that we're going to be posting. We're going to try and post it every Friday from now until the end of the NOFA period. It'll be posted on the grants management system. I'll show you where you can find it in the files. We have direct access to our GMS. We don't have to actually wait for anybody to upload information. We can go in and upload it whenever we need to. So if we need to go in and fix something, we can do it very, very quickly, which is kind of a new experience for us and for our staff. We're still trying to get used to the idea that we have the power. So we're going to be running and keeping track of any changes and issues, because if we change something, we want to make it explicitly clear for you guys that you know, hey, they changed something. On the upside, when we do changes in the application and we push those out, you will see them directly, and the application won't let you miss something important. So the application has a little bit of protection there, so that there's no way where you can change something and then you'll be like, I submitted it and you changed it. Like that won't happen. All right, so we'll jump right into it. Session 1, preparing for your application. It's really going to go over the front end of the application setup component. Session 2 is the competitive and over-the-counter applications, readiness, threshold, the different way that those two pieces work. And then session 3 is application submittal. We really focus mostly on your budget, and then talk about troubleshooting and what to do if stuff goes sideways, if you hit submit and time's out and all sorts of other potential technical issues. We'll go ahead and jump into session 1. So preparing application. We're going to look at the eCivis portal access, talk a little bit about completing your profile. We'll look at the NOFA solicitation page so you can see where all of the files are. If you all have been on our website, you've noticed there's not a whole lot of information there. That was intentional. We're really trying to drive folks into the eCivis program so that they start accessing that and looking at that early, and getting used to looking at that for updates. So that you're not looking to our website for updates, but you're actually going into the eCivis system for updates. We'll talk about technical support. We'll give you a number and an email to write down just in case you're like me and lose all access to everything when something goes crash. We'll talk about selecting the correct activity, and then we're going to go through the activity setup information. So, link to portal. If you've looked at some of the other eCivis trainings, this is a very, very common link. We've had this out for quite a while now, encouraging folks to go in and set up their profiles. There are several different ways to access your profile. When you set up your profile, it's going to look a little bit different than it will once you actually get into your account and look at your profile. And then it will look even more different when you actually get into a specific activity and look at your profile. So you really have multiple profiles to manage. Your activity-specific profile is the most important. For submitting an application, your portal profile will be most important for when you actually go in to administer your activity. Let's go ahead and jump into the NOFA solicitation page. So, you can find the NOFA solicitation. You go down here to the Get Funding. It's right here. And it takes you to this. There are 6 solicitations. So these are basically the 6 programs that we're going to be operating out of the CDBG NOFA. There's a competitive and an over-the-counter companion piece for each one. So we have our ED competitive, our ED economic development over-the-counter, our housing competitive, housing over-the-counter, non-housing, which is essentially community development competitive, and non-housing community development over-the-counter. You access the actual solicitation by clicking on that link, and it takes you to this page, which shows you the information about the NOFA. So each program, one of the things that we've done a little differently this time is we've dedicated a pot of funds to each program. Really, we needed to do that when we set it up this way so that we could run separate programs. We couldn't really overlap funds. That means it's a little bit different in terms of how the competition is going to work. Competitive will be like to like. So if you're doing housing competitive, you're only competing with housing competitive projects. You're not competing with public service projects. If you're doing public services, you're only competing with public services. If you're doing planning, you're only competing with planning. So we've kind of structured it in a way to make it a little bit easier for folks to be specific in what they're doing. The goal here was to allow you to get very, very detailed and nuanced in the actual operations planning components of your different activities, and not worry so much about how your activity was going to score competitively across the different programs. We'll talk a little bit more about scoring at the last section here. So the application is only available through that NOFA solicitation page. So you really have to go into that NOFA solicitation page to get to the application. We strongly recommend that you go through all of the files, all of the documents, everything in that NOFA solicitation before you get started with your application, just so that you know, kind of get some framework for what you're doing. Make sure you've looked at the NOFA. We shortened it a lot. We carved something like 40 pages off of that thing, so tried to make it a little bit more accessible, a little bit more direct. We've put most of the instructions in the actual application itself. We also went in and revised several of the appendices to make them a little bit more accessible, a little bit more straightforward. One of the key goals of the redesign was to take out all of the regulations that had kind of built up over the years on the program that were potentially hindering the expenditure rate or making it harder to operate the program. Stripping all of that out, kind of getting down to a baseline, and then using this pilot process, this next kind of cycle, to evaluate that baseline and see what regulations do we potentially want to strategically add back in. So right now, you're at kind of ground zero. We've really taken almost everything in terms of regulatory restrictions off of the program. You're at federal restrictions for almost everything. There's a handful of things, and you can look at our redesign and talk about what those are. But the goal here was to really get this to be very, very straightforward. So we want to make sure that you go and look at what changes are there. For the most part, the changes we've made have made things easier, we hope. Do let us know if that isn't the case. If it's made it more confusing, that's helpful for us to understand. So our application instructions are in the application. We have a strong recommendation that you prepare your application narratives in Word. Don't just write them, type them straight into the application. When we go and lock up the application on Monday, there is a chance, slim, but still real, chance that some of those fields will be overwritten. So if you had information in there, we don't want you to lose it. Put your information in Word. It will actually make it easier for you to review it anyway, because then you can ship it around. get multiple eyes on it, you can spell check it, you can grammar check it, punctuation check it, which you really can't do in the system. So we really strongly recommend doing your narratives in Word. Now, our vendor has promised us that when we go and lock stuff up, it's not going to overwrite anything, but I don't have the best luck of technology, so I'm just saying, be on the safe side. Our other recommendation is to put all of your documents that you're going to be uploading, your backup documents, into a dedicated file and make sure that they're clearly named so that you have final versions. Version control is super important. We don't want you to upload a draft version of a document because you might get stuck with that, right? So if you put all of your documents, you have them clearly named in a file, you've got all your narratives in a Word doc. Based on our experience in uploading your 2018 applications, you can have an application completed in about half an hour. So the actual process of putting it in the application is very fast, very easy. It's just important to make sure you have all of your pieces ready. So your application becomes Exhibit E of your standard agreement. This is actually going to become your contract. This is going to be the scope of work and the budget that you're going to be required to stick to through the administration of your activity. One of the big changes that came out of going with the system is that we have to do a one-to-one activity to standard agreement. So you don't have any more, there's no more master standard agreements with multiple activities in there. Each thing is going to be to one-to-one. A huge pro of that is when you're done, we can close out that contract. We don't have to hold the contract open waiting for some other activity to get done. When you're done, we can close it up, wrap it up, be done. It'll help prevent penalties and all sorts of ongoing reporting requirements. The downside is you're going to have more contracts to administer, but we hope that using the system will make it a little bit easier for everyone to administer those. So when you're looking at your application, do kind of keep in mind this becomes your contract. And that means that there are certain things that you'll want to make sure are really tight before you hit submit. We have a little bit of opportunity to do some adjustments after the fact, but very, very limited. So you'll want to make sure that you the information you put in there is the information you're ready to be bound to in an agreement in the event that you're awarded funding. All right, tech support. So who to call? Not HCDIT. They won't be able to help us and call you. They'll just be crazy. Well, you can call me, but I get pretty impacted, and so sometimes I'm just like, I don't know. Support at ecivis.com and the 877 number. I would write those down, put those on a sticky note, set it somewhere where it's somewhere available to you in the event something happens and you need to all of a sudden get a hold of them. It's not always to find that easy to find that number on their website. So if you have functionality problems, so a functionality problem, you can't log in, you're showing duplicate applications, the application's not saving right, the field won't let you enter the words you're trying to put in, call eCivis, contact them directly. You don't have to go through us, they'll work with you on that. If you're having program questions, you're not sure about the criteria, you're not sure what this is asking for, you feel like this is the wrong national objective, the beneficiary data is not matching, contact us, and please go through that CDBG NOFA email. Connie is managing that. I didn't introduce our team. So we have Connie Malavia, who's the CDBG manager. We have Sam Liu, who's working with us on the program. Mamie Early back there. Hi, Mamie. And Danielle Bergen back there also. This is the part of our team that we're working on this project together. Connie's administering that CDBG NOFA email, and she makes sure that we are using that not just as a tool to track information that's been requested from us, but as a training opportunity for staff. So if we get a good question, we put it in there, and then we have a staff discussion time where we go through those questions and help get consistency on our answers, because we really do want to be consistent for you guys. If you're not sure if it's a program question or a functionality question, like it's not clear, start with program and we'll triage it. We'll determine whether or not we need to route it to eCivis. So make sure you have that phone number down just in case, because like I said, it is a little harder to find sometimes. Okay, so our 6 NOFA program solicitations. As I mentioned, we've got the different types kind of aligned by the different funding set-asides. We're not doing combo programs. That's another one of the challenges that comes out of the one-to-one. The one-to-one agreement to activity is really beneficial because it will allow us to directly report to HUD and directly connect your activity in our fiscal system. So that's where the win is. On the downside, no combos, and it makes it much harder to switch money between activities. So you're going to need to be very precise, or as precise as you can be in your budgets and in your scope of works to make sure that you know what your activity is, because we're not going to have a lot of ability to move money between activities once we get them set up. So for your economic development competitive, those are going to be all of your business assistance and microenterprise programs. Over the counter will be capital grants, so any kind of capital project is going to be in there. Your housing assistance competitive is your single family home buyer and your single family rehab. Housing assistance over the counter is multifamily rehab and infrastructure in support of housing. You can kind of see the pattern here. If it's a program, it's going to be competitive. If it's a project, a capital project, it comes over the counter. Community development, public services, and planning are going to be competitive. Community development, non-housing, over-the-counter projects, all those public facilities and infrastructure projects. We have budgeted for the maximum amount of public services and planning that we could possibly put together. So we have 15% set aside for public services, and we have set aside 10% of the planning and admin for actual planning grants. One of the things that we changed is the caps on the activity delivery. So the only program that has an activity delivery with a cap is housing rehab. All of the other activities do not have activity delivery caps. We did that intentionally so that it would make it a little bit easier for you to budget your projects, so that we could carve 0.5% off of last year's admin set aside and put that in the general planning pool. We're trying to really maximize the amount of planning money we get out. We want to be right at the limit. We want to get out as much as we possibly can in planning money, because we feel that the planning is what helps you guys be successful in your projects. So just a little bit of context there, kind of what that change came from and why that happened. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the application from here. So here you are in your actual NOFA solicitation. This is the overview. This is kind of the introduction, the high level of what we're doing. You've got your eligibility. CDBG at the state level really is only available to local governments. If you're somebody else, then you'll need to partner with the local government. Financial, I still need to set that up. I've been saying that now for like 3 weeks. That's my fault. I'm working on it. Contact information. So Connie is your primary contact for everything except economic development. John Edich is the primary contact for economic development. His contact information is in that tab for those programs. And then you've got your files and file notes. So the file notes will identify any changes. Anytime we go in here and update, you'll see it here in the file notes. It will identify what we've updated, and then we will upload it in the files over here. They don't stay in alphabetical order, so it's going to be a little bit of a hodgepodge when you're looking for it, but we will be using the file notes to let you know whenever we've updated or added something. So as you can see, we've got our NOFA in here. We've got our application certifications. We've got our sample resolution. We've been asked to do a little bit of adjustment to the resolution, so we'll be making a revised resolution, but if you've used the one that was on here, you're fine, don't worry about it. We're just trying to make this a little bit more easier for certain jurisdictions that have different standards for approving contracts. You've got the Appendix E, so this is our items matrix codes. And then we've got a big change in here, and that is the Appendix K draft sample standard agreement. For those of you with 18 awards, this is going to be your standard agreement. It's almost completely done. There's one section that we still have to fix about dynamite. I'm not sure how it got in there. We'll get that resolved. But this is something different. We've never released the standard agreement out with the NOFA in my memory. So we want you to make sure that you're taking a look at that, because some of the way that we got information out of the NOFA is by including the standard agreement, so you can see what is going to be required of you when you actually go in and sign and execute for your award. So it's Appendix K, it's Exhibit A, which is your scope of work, Exhibit B, which is your budget payment terms. Exhibit C is a standard contracting exhibit, you can get it online, and Exhibit D, which is the program-specific terms. So definitely take a look at that to make sure that you're getting full information. So this is where all of your program files live, including the NOFA and including our CDBG program guidelines down here at the bottom. When you've looked at all of that, you're going to hit that apply button. Log in at your portal. Once you get into your portal, let's talk about profiles real quick. So your portal profile is like this. It's fairly comprehensive, but it really is targeted towards one jurisdiction, whoever is the owner of this specific profile. For the purposes of starting the applications in the system, they need to be started by the jurisdiction. They can't be started by your consultant, and they can't be started by your subrecipient partner. If the jurisdiction starts the profile, then we can actually start to share. You can share the application. I'm not going to specifically advocate for sharing passwords because it's not really a good idea, but that might be a way to do that until we get into our next cycle. One of the biggest complaints we've gotten is that folks are not able to share the application and collaborate on the application process. You can collaborate on the award management process afterwards, but the application process currently only allows one user. So we're working with our vendor to get that fixed because we know that most of you collaborate on these, and so you'll need to have that collaboration. So for this first profile, this is the master profile. This is the jurisdiction that owns this account, right? So you want to complete as much of this information as possible. And whatever you put in here will autofill into your standard agreement and will autofill into your activity. So once you put it in here, you don't have to put it in again, which makes life a little bit easier. Once you're back at this screen, you're going to hit this Create New Application button. It's going to ask you to sign in one more time just to validate that you know who you are. Different account, please. And it brings you to the second profile. So this is your activity profile. Your activity profile takes the information from your account profile and then adds in a bunch of different fields that you can customize specific to your activity. So if you want to include your partner jurisdictions, your partner districts, your partner subrecipients, this is where you put all those different entities in. It allows you to add as much organization information, hopefully, as you would potentially need. It allows you to add in secondary DUNS numbers, secondary points of contact, congressional districts. So we recommend that you fill this out for your activities, especially if you have one vendor or one subrecipient assisting with one activity and a different vendor and a different subrecipient working with another one. This is part of our pilot evaluation. We want to see how useful this is to you and see if this helps work with the actual administration of the activities. So once we've made the awards, is this making it easier for us to facilitate communication? So if you've got partners that you're working with, we really would like to see you add them into this profile piece. Once you've done that, you come down to what I call the Monopoly card portion of the project. And this is your actual application. The way the eCities program works, you'll get this blue action required if something is incomplete or doesn't meet minimum qualifications, if all of the required fields are not completed. So you'll edit, and here is our actual application. So the application is conditioned very much on what information you select. So the information you select in your category is going to impact the way that the information flows through the rest of the application. This conditional logic was here to help make this a little bit easier so you don't have to figure out how the different pieces combine in the CDBG program. There's a little bit of nuance in that. It can be a little tricky. So if we are doing single-family housing rehabilitation, we select that. Activity, there's really only one activity you can do in there. Your national objective, it's going to be a low-mod housing benefit because that's the only national objective that works with that. Your measure indicator, housing household units. So as you can see, this goes fairly quickly if you know kind of what you're doing. We've tried to structure it so that all of the activities flow this way. If some of the activities, you might have multiple national objectives, so you might be able to do a low mod jobs and areas. You'll have to determine which one you're actually going to be able to report on. But for the most part, we tried to align it so that it was very, very straightforward and you can move very quickly through it. If you find something broken in here, this was one of the trickier parts of putting this application together. Please let us know so we can fix it. When you get into section 2 is really your beneficiary information. Let me go get our PowerPoint caught up. So your beneficiary information, it becomes part of your standard agreement, which means it's really important to get your beneficiary data in correctly. There's a couple of different things you need to think about when you're talking about your beneficiaries. First of all, HUD's looking for unique individuals. They're looking for single counts beneficiary, which means if you're running a program like, say, a meals program where you're going to provide meals to seniors, and you're going to do 3 meals a day for 50 seniors, your beneficiary count is 50, right? That's the number of individuals that you are assisting. It's not the number of meals that you end up producing over the life of the program. You do still want to add that information in your project description because, you know, if you're serving 13,000 meals or whatever, that's pretty awesome, right? You want to make sure that you get credit for that. But the unique individuals that you've served, you've only served 50 people. So your beneficiary count is going to be 50. And you want to count that over the life of your contract. So if you're planning to run the program for a year, you're going to count it for a year. If you're going to run the program for 3 years because you have a 36-month expenditure on your contract, you're going to count those unique individuals for 3 years. A lot of times that means up front you'll have like a really heavy first quarter, slightly heavy second quarter, third quarter, and then at some point there you might not be actually tracking any new individuals using your program. It might be the same people over and over again, and that's okay. Right? That's acceptable. So you want to track the information in terms of beneficiary counts by specific individuals. When you're looking at your area benefit data, you're going to want to look at the low mod percentage, the low mod population information. And we'll get into that a little bit when we look at the area benefit. I'll show you how to find that. You'll want to make sure if you're doing limited clientele that you're tracking clients. If you're doing limited households, you're tracking households. You're not putting area benefit census data in there. We've seen a few older applications as we've been doing cleanup where they're like, we're going to offer a domestic violence services program and it's going to help 25,000 people. I'm like, oh, I hope not. I hope your city of 11,000 doesn't have 25,000 domestic violence victims. That's kind of upsetting. So you want to be very kind of intentional and thoughtful about this. The other thing is when you're setting in your beneficiary estimates, be realistic, right? If you think your program is going to serve 50 people, don't put 100 in there and be hopeful, because then we're going to look at you later when we're evaluating and say, why'd you say 100 and you only served 50? So be really, really thoughtful about how many people you're proposing to serve. We'd rather you overachieve than underachieve. We like overachievers. It makes us all look good. So this is an opportunity for you to really be, if you need to right-size your activities or right-size your programs, this is your chance. The next section in the application is your presumed benefit and your additional benefit types. So these aren't going to be required because not everybody does presumed benefit, but we tried to templatize the application so they're going to show up everywhere. So even if you're doing an activity that doesn't actually have a presumed benefit type, if you're targeting a population or you think you're going to have exceptional use of that activity or that resource by a population, go ahead and click this. No harm, no foul. It allows us to track how these different populations are served in other forms besides just the data we report to HUD. So we do annual performance reports and annual reports that HCD provides about all of the funding that HCD manages, and all of these benefit types are tracked in there. So if you're doing something, even if it's not presumed benefit, but you're helping seniors or you're helping kids or you're helping veterans, go ahead and put that in there. It helps us track that data and report on those accomplishments. So section 3, again, these sections are all tied up into your standard agreement. So when you go and you look at your Appendix K and you're looking at your different exhibits, you're going to see referencing Section 3, Exhibit E, Section 4, Exhibit E. This is the pieces that they're talking about, so that you can kind of see how these pieces connect. When a field is required in the system, you're going to see this little red asterisk. Right now, these are the only 2 required fields. When we are all done locking up on Monday, almost everything will be required. There will only be a handful of things that won't. Once we make a field required, it makes it much harder for us to change, which is why we haven't done it yet, so that we can fix things. It's harder to fix once we make it required. So again, if you see issues, let us know. Section 3 is your project title and your organization name. Please give a good descriptive title. The more kind of description you add in your title, it's still a title, so you don't want to go full project description, but it makes it easier for us if we're referencing your jurisdiction and the address and the type of activity than it does if you just say water well. It's like, okay. We have 15 water wells. Which water well project are we talking about? So try to put some descriptive information in there. The organization name is the responsible entity, right? So this is, we're going to end up putting this in multiple places. This is because sometimes we have projects coming in partnerships, and we want to make sure we're very clear about who's taking the lead in the project. Is this activity in a colonia? So this really applies to Imperial County, since they're the only county in California with CDBG state program eligible colonias. Is this activity for a non-federally recognized Native American tribe? So we have a state statutory requirement to set aside 1.25% of our funds for non-federally recognized Native American tribes. We've talked to folks, and it sounds like we're actually going to get folks applying for this year. It's awesome. We're very excited about that. Both the colonia and the non-federally recognized Native American tribes set-asides go on top of your jurisdiction limits. So when you're doing your preparing how much you're going to apply for, if you're going to apply for one of these set-asides, it's on top of, it's in addition to the 3.5 million jurisdiction limit. We'll get into this more in the budget, but for the record, so is your program income. And that's in an effort to encourage folks to engage with these set-asides, because we really want to see these get utilized. You'll notice throughout the application there are links here to we put these here to help you be able to get more information. If you find a link and it's not working, let us know. We tested them all, but you know how hyperlinks are, they don't always stay put. So this is the application information section. Colonia and non-federal tribes. Okay, so this is the program project census location. So you get asked for this regardless of whether or not you're doing a area benefit. Everybody needs to put this piece of information in. The reason we have this information in here for everyone is that we're trying to figure out a better way to map our legislative district participation. You put your district information in your profile, and I think you saw that in the activity profile, it had the district information. But political districts, they get drawn, redrawn often. Those boundaries shift. And when we associate the funding with the district number, it oftentimes will be like, well, in this year it was District 3, but then in this year it's District 5, and then the funding isn't identified chronologically, so it's like it never happened, but did it happen? It makes it really difficult for us and requires a lot of manual administration on the HCD side to do the legislative updates. This is our attempt to systemize that. So what we're looking for you to do is put the census information in for the responsible entity, the applying agency, whoever it is that's going to be responsible for kind of signing the standard agreement. That way, it gets hard-coded to your geographic location, and then it doesn't matter what happens to district boundaries. When we run the maps, the money is hard-coded to that location. HCD is working on putting together a more robust geographic information system, GIS system. We're a little behind the times. Most places have those now, but we're still kind of working on ours. Ultimately, that will replace this, and you'll be able to just like drop a pin and easy peasy. But for now, for this application, we want you to use this. We provided a couple of links to HUD's mapping tool and HUD's website. So I think there's been a lot of frustration with the area benefit information and getting the census information in the past. Sometimes HCD has provided it, but we provided it only at the jurisdiction level. This is our attempt to right-size that. And I'm going to go into these in just a minute when we get into the area benefit discussion. The next ask here is the address for the primary applicant. And again, this is part of our attempt to figure out ways to hard code this data so that we can just throw legislative district mapped layers on top of it in the map and systemize our legislative reporting. So this wants to be the primary address for the applicant. So if you're a county, it's going to be your county administrative building. If you're a city, it's going to be City Hall. And it doesn't matter if you're doing the activity North County and your administrative building in South County, it goes to your building. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about LMA activities here, because this is where that information lives if you're doing a LOMOD area benefit activity. Let's see, let me go in and do a different application type. Oh, there we go. There's a So if you have selected an area benefit activity, you're going to get this question: are you using an income survey? If you say yes, it will say, please upload your survey. You upload your survey information right here. If you say no, do you have additional census tracts in your service area? So that means this is where you completed that legislative information. If you're doing other tracts, different tracts, additional tracts, you'll want to have this say yes, and then it opens up a bunch of census tract identifiers for you. And you can fill in as many as you need. I think we stuck 5 or 6 in here. If you need more than 5 or 6 census tract identifiers, block group identifiers, let us know. But this is where you would put the rest of your area benefit data in. And it all toggles off of this income survey question. Go back to my housing competitive, because that one's a little bit easier. Just show the rest of this. It's a little bit hard to do the computer on the screen sideways. And you'll notice I didn't hit save when I backed out and went and did other stuff, but it kept what I had put in so far. So I do recommend hitting save often, hitting save frequently, but just in case you're like me and you forget, it usually keeps your information for you. Okay, so activity address. Oh, is anybody here doing an income survey? Anybody doing an income survey? Okay. So if you are doing an income survey, look at Appendix H. We also have an income survey webinar. Strongly recommend taking a look at that. And also reach out to us beforehand. We want to make sure your methodology is sound. We don't want you to go through the cost and time and effort of doing one, sending it to us and us being like, oh yeah, methodology not sound, doesn't work. They're kind of technical because you're technically replacing census data. So please do reach out to us if you're going to do one. I say that more for the recording than for the folks that are heard. Okay, activity address. So if you're, this is where you put in your activity specific information. What address are you going to be doing the activity at? If it's a service and it's got a discrete location, you put that in there. If it's an activity that you're going to run out of City Hall or the County Administration Building, you put that there. If it's an over-the-counter project and it's at the intersection of First and Walnut, you're going to put First and Walnut intersection there. Just try to get it the best you can. If you have questions about what to put, let us know.
So for rehab, you would put the City Hall address or just various?
Yes, because you don't know what your rehabs are going to be yet. Single family rehabs, you don't know what units you're going to do. So you're going to run your program probably out of City Hall or the County Administrator's Building. When you actually go in to do your reporting, then you'll have your unit addresses. So, but you don't know that at application, typically. Which gets me to another thing. In your application, you don't want any personally identifiable information, no PII. So, no account numbers, no names and address connections. If you have questions, let us know. The next section is your activity description. And this is really where you are pitching your activity. Now, none of this is scored, right? So this is all just information, but really want to know what you're doing. What did I do? Oh, I backed out of it. You really want to know what you're doing with this activity. So tell us about it, right? If this is a meals activity and you're going to serve 13 or 15 or 50,000 meals, this is where you tell us. This really should be the who, what, where, and when of your activity. So give us a lot of detail. If this is part of a multi-phase project, identify it. If it's a segment of a larger project, identify it. If it's gonna trigger a planning process, or if it's the result of a planning process, identify that. Right? Really tell us what you're doing. This should include at a minimum whatever you've got in your NEPA description. And then everything else, if you are trying to really sell this activity to a potential funder. Again, it's not scored, but this is the information that gets transmitted to HUD that says, here's all the amazing stuff we're doing with our CDBG dollars. So we really want to make sure this is robust and really shows the awesomeness that you guys are doing on your work. The next section, and I think these are a little bit new, is your detailed scope of work, your task narrative, and your deliverable narrative. So your task narrative is the how. It's the how of what you're doing. The goal here with our task narratives is for you to show us that you know what's involved in your activity. What are the next steps? What things do you have to do? And if you've ever written like a RFP or you've done a scope of work, that's really what this needs to look like. Task 1, release information about marketing plan to public to let folks know that we're initiating the program. Task 2, hold a public hearing to give feedback. Task 3, put the project out to bid. Like whatever your tasks are unique to your activity, this is where you show us that you know what you're doing. It's not sport, but it does become part of your standard agreement. So we really want to make sure that you put as much detail as you comfortably can in here. This is part of what we're going to be evaluating as the redesign pilot to see if this is effective. And this is also part of what we've used to get rid of some of the experience requirements that existed in prior NOFAs. So we're not requiring that you show that you have similar program experience, right? What we're asking is that you show us you know what you're doing. You know what's going to be involved in your activity. Ditto with the deliverables. So the deliverables are basically what gets monitored in your activity when we come out and monitor you, right? We look at your labor compliance information. We look at your NEPA information. We look at your unit files if you're doing competitive housing. We look at your income qualifications, income verifications. We look at your information about public services, who you served and when they were served, how they were served. So this is all of those different things that you need to have on hand in your public information binder. Again, this indicates to us that you know what you're looking at. We're not going to score you on it. What we will do, though, is reach out to you and say, hey, we're looking at your deliverables, and we think you probably need to add this, this, and this. Or we're looking at your deliverables, and it looks like we might want to talk about this to help you make sure that you know what pieces you need to be successful. Our goal here is to be your partners, and we're really looking to be your partners in success. We don't want to be partners in failure. That hurts. So if you have questions about your deliverables, these aren't scored. If you have questions about your task narrative, these aren't scored. Reach out. Talk to us. We'll help you with this. This is also a good opportunity for our staff to learn how to really work with you to be good project managers. So this is something we really want to help collaborate on and work with you on. Section 5. So we talked about our detailed scope of work, the how, deliverable narratives. So in section 5, the first thing it asks is, will you need more than 30 days after the expenditure deadlines to complete your activity recording? So one of the larger points of confusion I think that's come out of the CDBG program is the dual deadlines in your old standard agreements. You had a 36-month expenditure deadline, but a 5-year contract period. When I was working as a consultant, I had multiple jurisdictions be like, no, we've got time, we've got 5 years. I'd be like, no, man, you've got a month. Like, your expenditure period stops, now, and after that, the contract isn't valid. So, you need to move on your activities. We are only going to have one deadline in your standard agreement, that is the 36-month expenditure timeline. So, if you need more time after that 36 months to report your accomplishments, say you're doing infrastructure and supportive housing, and your housing units will be done at 4 years and 6 months, you're going to check yes on this. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to make your project more or less competitive or more or less viable. It just lets us know that when we set up your project in our reporting, we're going to need to give you extra reporting time, right? We'll work with you and figure out what that deadline is on that extra reporting time. That way we don't have that in your contract as a deadline that adds confusion to when your contract actually expires. Your contract expires at the operational expenditure period of your contract expires at the expenditure time. Another thing to note, and this is in the standard agreement, so we're not going to be doing any funds request after the expenditure deadline closes. We've moved all of this readiness requirements and all of the kind of pre-programmed work into the front end so that we don't have kind of this lagging impact at the back end. The standard agreement, the sample draft standard agreement, includes information about what constitutes a contract revision, which is just a simple administrative change, versus a contract amendment, which means new signatures. So I would take a look at that and make sure that you kind of understand what the requirements are there, because there won't be time after the expenditure period to get stuff done. So you'll want to really think about that in terms of your project scheduling. The next question is, do you want to add additional milestones? So there's 2 required milestones for your activity. Milestone 1 and whatever your last milestone is. I think we have it down as 10 here because we programmed this with 10, and this will probably be adjusted in future NOFAs as we figure out what the best process is for this. The last milestone is whenever you think you're going to actually be done with the construction or expenditure portion of your project. The first milestone is when you think you're going to start. So if you're doing an over-the-counter project, a capital project, that'll be when you think you're going to take the project out to bid. If you have an ongoing service and you're going to put more money into an ongoing service, that's when you expect to start paying for services with the new money. If you're starting a project, it's when you think that you're actually going to kind of kick the project off. This initial start date is going to be a little bit flexible because we have never done this before, and we don't know how long it's going to take us to review these and how long it's going to take us to process these. We've tried to do everything we could to move the portions of the project, portions of the operations that tend to get bogged down in this program into the front end. So like your standard agreement's already attached, right? That will come out with your award announcement. We've hard-coded the legislative data so we don't have to manually do ledge letters. Like we've tried to do a lot of things in here to condense the review time and condense the award time, but we've never used the system and we've never reviewed an application in the system. So we're going to be figuring this out. So what we're telling folks is our expectation is no more than 90 days after submittal, whether it's OTC or competitive. We'll let you know what you'll have your award information, whether you were awarded or not. So that gives you kind of an idea when you're thinking about when you would want to start your initiation date. If we can shorten that, we are going to shorten that. And if we start reviewing these and we're discovering that it only takes 30 days or it takes 2 weeks or whatever, then we'll let folks know that that's kind of the performance so that you can be a little bit more precise. But we're saying please give us a 90-day window for review so that we can kind of figure out what this is going to involve from us.
So you're looking for a specific date?
Yes, but one of the things that will happen is before we execute your standard agreement, in fact, before we even send it out to you, we'll reach out and say, hey, do you need to adjust your milestones? Or do you need to adjust your budget? And we'll talk about, we'll make those adjustments ahead of time so that what we put in there is actually enforceable and not pretending. And again, this is part of the pilot evaluation. If it works really well, we'll keep doing it this way. If it doesn't work and we find it was useless, then we'll figure out a different way to do it. You have the option here to add additional milestones. So if you've gone in and you've done your task of work, and you were super explicit, like in your scope of tasks, and you want to tie that to milestones, you absolutely can. And milestone adjustments are just a contract revision. They're not a contract amendment unless it's your last milestone. So we can go in and adjust these as you're operating the project. So if you want to put more milestones in here, these get translated into action items in part when you get to the grant administration phase. And it will make it much easier for your rep to help you administer your project. To be like, oh yeah, you had in your list of tasks that this, and this was going to happen, and this is when you were going to do it. And so it'll ping you, it'll ping your rep. You'll get notifications. Hey, this milestone is approaching. What do you want to do about it? Where are you? How are things going? So if you want to use this feature, we're not requiring it now because there is so much new happening in the program that we felt it would be a little bit overkill. But it's something that we would like to explore and see. So if you feel like this is something that could help you administer your activity, we would really appreciate it if you wanted to give this a try. It's optional. It's optional. All right. Let's take a quick break. I think we're kind of ahead of schedule, so if y'all want to take 10 minutes or until whatever the 40.